Hey y'all, before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to tell you about an upcoming online summit that's happening August 6th through August 8th, and it's going to be from 12 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is called Journeying Home to Yourself. I'm super excited about this opportunity. I'm in community with 11 other women who are beautiful souls wanting to pour back into other women. And what I think is super cool is we all have a different lens on journeying home to ourselves. And so you definitely can take away some 1% shifts by joining the summit. And don't worry if you're busy and can't commit to 4 hours a day. Number one, once you sign up, you will get all the replays directly sent to you. Number two, you can pick and choose. So if you don't have time, but one person resonates with you, just listen to their what they present. If you're interested, you can go to momontheverge.org/summit. I will also have the link in the show notes, and I will also be promoting it on my social media as well, Facebook and Instagram, which you can also find those links in my show notes as well if you're not connected with our community already. So I am so excited. I can't wait to see what we learn from this. Let's get into the episode today. Talk to y'all soon.
So this is where kind of my journey with somatic started. This is where my journey with my nervous system journey started a little earlier because I had a black mold issue and that attacked my nervous system. But this caused me to go deeper in just how trauma manifests in the body, and that I can choose to live a different way, and that I chose this. Yes, it happened to me, and also I get to make a new decision.
Mm-hmm. It's so good. I mean, it is that choice that we all have that we can make. And I tell myself daily, the challenges that we come up against are opportunities for growth, just by simply reframing the way we're looking at things. Not easy, right? I'm not saying it's this magic pill that's, you just, let's think this is a happy. That's not what it's about. It's about, what am I supposed to be learning through this? So that when I get to the next chapter and it resurfaces, because it will, you will have better tools, you'll have a better understanding, and you will know sort of what that was all about. We don't know while we're in it. So, and gosh, so many things you said just makes me choke up. I had mono as a kid, and it basically re-engaged the Epstein-Barr virus, came back up. And
same.
Much like you, it was like I had to sleep. I was having to nap, and I was out of my mind, and I just couldn't deal one more. And it was like I didn't have the tools.
Yep.
And so the reason that I wanted to have you on the podcast today, the reason I want to continue to have a conversation like this about all health and wellness, it's not because you need to look a certain way. Health and wellness is building a tool belt of tools to be able to deal with all the life challenges that you receive. Hey there, Midlife Mamas. Welcome to the Healthy Lifestyle Habits podcast, just for midlife mamas. Because let's be real, this midlife chapter is no joke. Our bodies are different, our minds are different, our hormones are different, and we're trying to figure out who we are after momming for all these years. This empty nest phase is an eye-opener for sure. What worked for us in our younger years is no longer serving us because we have so much life experience, and that's okay. This is a supportive space guiding you through those powerful 1% shifts to help you grow. As we know, health is not a one-size-fits-all, so each week you will learn about different topics, taking away tools and tips to implement. This season, we're going to tackle some of the biggest midlife questions that y'all have had about wellness in this chapter. We're going to be chatting about what is holding us back? Where do we find joy? How do we prioritize ourselves through self-care? We're always going to be talking about ingredients, daily toxins, food swaps, breath work, and mindset, just to name a few. There's nothing better than feeling empowered to create the best next chapter. Am I right? After each episode, I hope you feel more equipped and at ease to take a step or two that will allow you to thrive. Whether you're a newbie or an OG listener, I am so glad that you're here. Let's embrace this new chapter and thrive together. Are you ready for all the possibilities? If you said yes, say, I am ready. Hey y'all, welcome back to today's episode. I am super excited to introduce you to Erin. She is a somatic trauma-informed coach. She has a company called Next Gen Caregivers, and she was a caregiver to both of her parents simultaneously. Her dad had cancer, and her mom was diagnosed with dementia and Parkinson's. And so for 11 years, she cared for both of her parents. And during that time, she came to a point where she needed to figure out some tools to help her to navigate and also, keep herself in the healthiest version that she could. And so that is what led her kind of to a lot of this work that she currently does. And she works with caregivers of all stages. So if you're a newbie looking for logistics or stress management, she can help you. If you're a seasoned caregiver and you're looking for some somatic awareness and emotional support, she's also there for you too. This episode is very near and dear to my heart. You guys will hear part of my caregiving story as well as part of Erin's, but you will also hear from Erin about what somatics is and how regulating your nervous system during this particular time in our life is very important to our health and our wellness. And again, you will hear me get choked up a little bit here and there. So I hope that the end result of this episode for you, whether you are a caregiver, whether you've been a caregiver, or whether you are about to embark on this journey, or you know someone that is, there are tools, there are people out there for support. And I am actually taking one of Erin's courses right now. And I cannot tell you, just being in community with these women, we're all different caregivers. Two of us are not alike, but just being in community with people that get it and are going through it, and we can support each other. It is just a beautiful community to be in. So if you are somebody in this phase and you're looking for support, I highly recommend checking Erin out. All of her show information will be in the show notes, so you can check it out after. But I cannot wait to hear what you guys take away from this episode, no matter where you are in your journey, because I know that you can find 1 or 2% shifts to take along with you. So let's meet Erin. Hey everyone, welcome back to the episode. Today I'm super excited to have on Erin. We actually met through a mutual friend, and she is in the caregiving world, and in this midlife era, emptiness, moms or not, we are all kind of diving into that chapter of life. And as you guys know me, you know that I'm deep in it. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with Erin. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me. It's a good day.
Awesome. And you look very pretty in your blue.
Thank you. It's one of my colors, if you can't tell, I'm matching my wall.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I just want people to get to know who you are. And so if they haven't been following you quite yet, I'm sure that they will be following you soon. So if you could tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, Erin, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I fell in love with caregiving. It's really interesting. I didn't really think that I would be the person to be the caregiver. Honestly, between me and my sister, she is the more nurturing person out of the two of us. But it kind of landed on me. And so I took care of both of my parents. My dad had cancer and my mom had frontal temporal lobe dementia. And it was my greatest honor to be able to care for them in that way.
How long did you care for both of them?
Yeah, so my dad was first diagnosed in 2012 with an adenoma carcinoma in his eye. And it kept bouncing back and forth between his eye and his lymph nodes in his neck. And it was like clockwork. Every fall he was having some sort of surgery. He ended up losing his eye. And it was really just one of those I was co-caregiving with my mom, so I was supporting her in that. At the time, I was actually in direct sales, so my mom was my manager, my office manager in my office, so we worked together for about 8 years before she started showing signs and symptoms. And it was probably around 2018 when my mom started just simple things. Like I would be having her I would have her make a list for me in Microsoft Excel at the time. And because, we weren't really into the Office suite in G Suite yet.
The olden days
when we used computer software. all 8 years ago. And so it was one of those things that she would all of a sudden send me a list in Word, and she wouldn't understand why I would be so frustrated. And I was like asking her questions and questioning her, and like things that she could normally get done, all of a sudden she wasn't getting done. And I was questioning her, and she would get really mad at me and scream at me on the phone. And so that's when we were like, we think there's something deeper going on here. And we started doing some investigation and getting some testing done and all of that. So, so that's kind of, so she passed in 2023. So culmination, it was about 12, 13 years total with both of my parents.
Okay. That resonates with me. It's definitely, we're going on 11 years of the whole, back when I turned 40, my dad had, his heart surgery. And so for the next, however many years it was before he passed, it was just like up and down and all the doctor's appointments and all the things. And at that time I was also co-caregiving, but my mom probably had dementia at that time. Like she probably had some of those things going. She was slow. Like they had lived with me for 3 months, and I was like, this is getting dangerous. Like I just could see things like doing a task it took a long time, like folding laundry. It was just like, oh my Lord, like what is happening here? But then at that point, it's really hard because they're still independent sort of. Yeah. So anyways, after my dad passed, my mom has epilepsy, so she was no longer able to live on her own. Mm-hmm. And I, in my gut, just didn't feel right about, moving her to assisted living when she hadn't even grieved my dad. So she did move in with us, and she lived with us for 4 years. Mm-hmm. It was hard for her to have her own life, and she didn't really want to either. I know it was all part of the disease. Like I can see that, but it was just getting to a point where she was just starting to decline a little bit. And it was really rough within the house because she wasn't aware. So she would do weird things, it was just a lot. And my health started really suffering. So we made the decision with neurologists that it would be better for her to be in assisted living at that time because she was still independent. Yeah. And it would give her more of a social aspect and let me have some, healing time for myself because I really was not well. So it felt right at that time. So we moved her, and things were okay for the first, 2.5 years. When I say okay, the system of our healthcare and assisted living and memory care that could be a week-long conversation of how bad it is. So we were there constantly in meetings, trying to make things right, all the things. And this past October, she ended up getting a UTI that landed her in the hospital. Mm-hmm. And it was like a 28-day decline we thought she was going to pass. She ended up not. She went into AFib, had a heart surgery. At that point, we thought she would go to memory care. Mm-hmm. But she came back with us to recoup, which took way longer. She just did not bounce back. She's probably, I would say, around a 4-year-old level when we're talking abilities and things like that. We had already made the decision to move her to memory care. And so we were just trying to figure out when the right time was. She went to memory care for 4 days with the caregivers that we had hired to be here with us during her recovery, because I was like, you need to go with her, and so that you can be our eyes and ears without us, because they act different when you're there versus when you're not there. Yeah. And at day 4, I had cried every single day, and I was like, this is not working. Yeah. So, and we can't afford to have 24-hour care on top of paying a bazillion dollars for a facility that is not doing anything. So again, we made another decision to pivot and have her come back here with care. So we have 20 hours a day of care. Mm-hmm. And I had to switch my mindset. Mm-hmm. I had to make a decision internally that I'm not her caregiver. Mm-hmm. I'm still her daughter. And my job is to get her the best care that we can. Yeah. And then fill in the gaps so that I don't become resentful and I don't feel all of the pressure to be a certain thing all the time and not be able to have a life. Yeah. So with that, I think all of the growth I've done, personally over the years, that led me to be able to make those better decisions than it was, 5-6 years ago. I was not in that mind space. So Um, yeah, that's been the wildness over here. So I'm curious with you, you went through your whole caregiving, and I mean, please share some of the ups, some of the
Yeah.
downs, because it's real, and
Yeah.
it's not a perfect ride by
Mm,
any means. So
no.
tell us some of your experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, thank you for sharing your story. And it's very brave and just vulnerable for you to share that, and also to realize that there's a different way, that you can hold caregiving in a different light, that you still do get to be her daughter, because it is something that happens when you're caregiving, especially if they're living with you. Even if there are caregivers, and like if you're fortunate enough to have a team of caregivers that you trust and that you know that they are taking care of your mom the best way possible, then it changes the game, and it changes your ability to relax in your nervous system, to be able to like sit back and allow that to happen, right? It's when those things aren't happening that all of a sudden it's, we get back into that hyperactivity mode, getting into hyperachieving and hypervigilance, where we're always looking, always making sure that they're okay. And we don't get to enjoy them as our mom anymore or our dad anymore. And it was kind of like being a co-caregiver with my mom for, oh gosh, about 8 years. And then it was like literally, baptism by fire. I always say, because it was like one day, like my mom had started to decline some more. She was starting to, we couldn't trust her just to do little things, right? Like turning on the oven, grabbing knives the wrong way, like going out the door and not being able to get home. It was just those little signs where we were like, okay, things are progressing. And we still didn't yet have a diagnosis. It's interesting in the dementia world. There's, like 120 different types of dementias, and they're such a moving target, because as the disease progresses, different signs, symptoms, and everything show up. So it's just this like, you're just moving down the mountain, and it's like one day it could be this, and then the next day it could be that. And like, it's just this, and then they treat them differently with different medications, and they have different, things that they recommend. And so my dad in June of 2020 became really ill. We weren't sure if it was COVID. We weren't sure what it was, but he got rushed to the hospital, and he ended up coming home on hospice. From that hospital visit, he had basically, just because the cancer was only in the one area, it just kept coming back, and everything was necrotic, and the cancer had come back again, and he was actually leaking spinal fluid out of his nose. So they plugged the hole in his brain, and we actually went to the hospital thinking that we were pulling him off of the ventilator to pass in the hospital. In the middle of COVID, I had to fight to get me, my sister, and my mom, all three of us there, because they were only going to let one of us in there to say goodbye. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, this is not an option. Like, we're not we cannot send our mom in there, because she would pull his tubes out. Like, she would literally like pull his IVs, like, not happening.
She'd pack his bag and she'd be drooling him down the sidewalk.
And so we did this whole thing. I fought tooth and nail to get us all in there. And it was really funny. My mom, like literally within 5 minutes of being there, mom was like, okay, I'm ready to go home, because she couldn't process what was happening, and she couldn't vocalize what was happening. And my dad finally, he woke up, he was talking less than 3 hours later, like nothing happened, he's just fine. And this is like his 13th ventilator that he's come off within his life. And, there's like a 50% survival rate coming off of a ventilator. This man has like more lives than cats. And so he ended up coming home on hospice, and we were able to spend 3 weeks with him. And at the very same time, my mom finally got her diagnosis, which was frontal temporal lobe dementia and Parkinson's. And I remember standing in the street of my neighborhood, just talking to a girlfriend, and almost screaming, crying on the phone, just going, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Not only is my dad coming home to die, but like literally my mom just got a terminal diagnosis. Like, she's not going to get better. And what are we going to do? She's going to need she already needs full-time help, somebody to watch her. I'm 36. Like, how are we going to do this? My sister was 34. We did not anticipate in our 30s that we would be losing our parents to and who knows what the caregiving journey looks like? How long is this going to be? 4 months? Is this going to be 4 years? Is it going to be 14 years? Like you just don't know when it comes to dementia. And so immediately after my dad's passing, I stepped into taking care of my mom. And coming from a very high achieving type A, owned my own business for 11 years, like was in the top 1% of my direct sales business. I had self-care down. I had like mindset strategies down. I was killing it, right? I knew all the things. I taught all the things. Like I got asked to speak and teach people all the things. And a lot of times I think when we are that type of person, we think we have it all together and we think that we just know what to do and it's fine and we're fine. Right. Mm-hmm. Like I'm good. Right. And it wasn't until my mom almost about 60 days, because everything was still shut down from COVID. So we couldn't do my dad's funeral until the world opened back up. So we waited about 45 days from his death to do his funeral so people could actually attend the funeral. And so within that time frame, which that actually ended up being a huge blessing because most people like rush to do the funerals. And sure. I actually found there was so much peace in being able to settle ourselves before we jumped into a room full of people who were grieving. And we actually chose to do, when my mom died, we actually chose to do the same thing, not because of COVID, but just because we wanted to. Good. We felt good to be able to not rush into planning the funeral and not rush into like doing all of the things. So, but my mom had 2 falls immediately after my dad died. And one, she fractured her back. There was like that small window of time where the world opened back up again and people were like, maybe we can be out together. And so that was that one, there was like a month and I was able to be in the hospital with her that weekend. And this woman, the part of her brain that tells her she has pain literally didn't work anymore. So she had a broken back, up and down, out of bed, up and down, up and down. You want to talk about anxiety? You want to talk about stress? Yeah. So she came home, she recovered, and then ended up having a brain bleed where she ended up getting flown out from our local hospital to a hospital in Washington, D.C., where I could not go to because they had very strict COVID guidelines. And it was just, I think I'm still recovering from the trauma from that, like literally feeling like I was dropping my child off at a hospital and expecting them to be able to, she couldn't talk. She couldn't advocate for herself. She was getting into things that she shouldn't at home. I mean, there's so many things in a hospital that are so dangerous. And so, but I say this really long kind of traumatic story to say that like so much of this was like building in my nervous system. So much of this was like building and I just kept pushing through. I kept pushing emotions down. I kept pushing through and just doing what had to be done because it had to be done. And I wasn't giving myself space to process. Of course I cried. Of course, like I had moments, but like there was no real processing. It was just, I got to hold my life together. I got to hold my business together. I now have to hold my mom's household, my parents' household together because my dad died. My mom is now shipped off to a hospital and to a nursing home facility. We're scrambling, trying to get passwords together. How do we get into everything? How do we pay for everything? How do we do all of this stuff? And, it was probably December of 2020, maybe like January 2021. I'll never forget, I started waking up having heart palpitations. I started all of a sudden having immense pain in my body. I started little things that I used to be able to do. I had brain fog. I wasn't able to function the same way. I was gaining weight. I was, like puffy and just like, my go get it done attitude, I all of a sudden couldn't even handle the simplest task of like opening the mail. And I went and got some blood work done and my doctor called me and she was like, you need to get to the emergency room like right now. All of my blood work was showing signs that I was having a heart attack and that I was had a blood clot potentially in my lungs. And I will never forget, again, in the middle of COVID, I walked in, they knew I was coming. They rushed full protocol. Interestingly enough, my blood pressure was normal. Not sure how that was possible, but it was normal.
At least one thing.
Yeah, but like nobody could go with me. I had to advocate for myself under duress in the middle of all of this. Long story short, it ended up just being a panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, my body biophysically manifested the chemicals that show
Mm-hmm.
that you're having heart issues, that show that you're having all of this stuff. And it ended up just being stress. Like everything was fine. And it was in that moment where I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to be a caregiver. And I also know I can't keep doing it this way because I won't survive. It's not a matter of if, like my mom, it's so funny. People who have brain neurodegenerative diseases, they are so resilient.
Yeah, right.
So, like literally and it's kind of like a toddler. Like if something doesn't work today, you try it tomorrow, it could work tomorrow. Like you just, and they forget, we're the ones that are holding on to. So, so this is where kind of my journey with somatic started. This is where my journey with my nervous system journey started a little earlier because I had a black mold issue and that attacked my nervous system. So I already had a lot of nervous system knowledge, but this caused me to go deeper in just how trauma manifests in the body and that like I can choose to live a different way and that I chose this, it happened to me and also I get to make a new decision.
Mm. It's so good. I mean, I feel like we walk in the same shoes kind of. It is that choice that we all have that we can make, but people don't know that. So, I'm thinking about like when you were going through that black mold experience, which was something completely separate. You had no idea how that was going to play.
Yep.
And the tools you learned, how that was going to play into this whole nother stage of your life.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to tell people, and I tell myself daily, like the challenges that we come up against are opportunities for growth just by simply reframing the way we're looking at things. Not easy, right? I'm not saying it's this magic pill that's, you just, let's think this is a happy. That's not what it's about. It's about what am I supposed to be learning through this so that when I get to the next chapter and it resurfaces, because it will, you will have better tools, you'll have a better understanding, and you will know sort of what that was all about. We don't know while we're in it. So, and gosh, so many things you said just makes me choke up and like all the things, but learning, because like you, I didn't have experienced the heart attack stuff, but I had mono as a kid and it basically re-engaged the Epstein-Barr virus, like came back up. And
same, me too.
Much like you, it was like I had to sleep. I was like having to nap and I was out of my mind and I just couldn't deal one more. And it was like, I didn't have the tools.
Yeah.
And so the reason that I wanted you to have you on the podcast today, the reason I want to continue to have a conversation like this about all health and wellness, it's not because you need to look a certain way. Health and wellness is building a tool belt of tools to be able to deal with all the life challenges that you receive. And we are not given those things. It's like, I keep thinking I was an educator before I was a mom and then kind of got into this side of things. And I often think, yes, history is important. I'm not going to say it's not. Math is important, but let's get real here. Like the real important stuff is how do we settle our nervous system? How do we work through something that becomes very traumatic? Because trauma is all different and we have different glimpses of it throughout our life, but this is real. Like this stage of being a caregiver or watching your parents decline, whether you're a caregiver or not, that whole process of watching that, 24. So when I turned, 11 years ago, it's like when I noticed, it's like I had to tell myself, my mom is no longer my mom that I used to know. I need to get to know this new person because she doesn't know that she's a new person. But for me, it's like having to work through grief while she's alive. And so it's been years of just kind of getting comfortable with that, which again isn't an easy task. It's like she colors 90% of the day. She's doing her puzzles. She's, engaging. She's stubborn as hell, all the things. But like when I sit with her and I color with her, it's like special.
Yeah. Well, and also, Robin, like I believe that like our mom is still in there, our dad is still in there. It's just a matter of like how we view them. I think sometimes we're so busy living in who they used to be, or
Mm.
we're so busy living in like where and in like in who they used to be in terms of how they used to dress, how they got up and took care of themselves, how they got up and spoke to you, how they, whether they took care of you or didn't take care of you, like that's a whole other, like if they were a nurturing parent or not, like that's a whole different conversation. But, and then we're so focused on like where they're going. Like if this is all their capacity today, then like what does tomorrow look like or next week or the week after? Like, I remember my mom was in hospice for 14 months. It was 14 months of like, is today the day? Like, is today the day? And, but when I stopped trying to like put her in this box of the
Mm-hmm.
expectations of who she used to be, and like I could just be present with her because spirit recognizes spirit.
Yep.
And like, so she may not be able to say my name. She may not be able to say, like how she's feeling today or like whatever, but just being with her, being present with her in that
Mm-hmm.
moment and just finding gratitude that she is still here and that I can still color with her or play in flowers with her, like whatever it is. It's like there's so much beauty in that and there's so much calmness and peace in that when we allow that to be enough.
Yes.
I think we are trying to like put them in this old box of expectations when like what if we just expect them to like we stop worrying about doing and who they used to be doing and what you think you need to be doing and we just
Mm-hmm.
be.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think pause is my word of the year. And I
Mhm.
can't just save my life many a times when I'm feeling that sense of like, what am I doing? And I've got all these things to do. And then she's also got all these things of needs. It's like, no, just pause.
Mhm.
Like, you're not doing yourself any good. And you're certainly not doing her good if you're frustrated. So, and it's what I find so fascinating about dementia. My mom has frontal lobe as well.
Okay.
There are moments of clarity for her.
Mhm.
There are moments like when she looks in the mirror and she's like, oh, my hair, like, and
Mhm.
then we're just like, your hair looks beautiful. We're not dyeing it anymore. It's naturally, it's like, but she comes back into that, like
Yeah.
that whole, because her hair was her thing, so it's like,
Yeah.
but again, it's just about pausing and meeting her where she is for the day,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like, because every day is different.
Well, and in meeting her where she is, like allowing her to have those emotions, like when
Yeah.
she has, like when those moments come up, because I talk to people about that all the time when people talk about their quote unquote like difficult loved one, and I'm like, well, imagine if one day the last thing you remember is like being able to like drive yourself places and do things. And all of a sudden you're coming in and out of consciousness where people are taking care of you. You might be wearing briefs. You might be
Mhm.
like in a bed, not able to move. Like I wouldn't be
Mhm.
happy about it.
Right, right,
Like,
right.
and so
Yeah.
but it's sitting with people when they're not happy or when they're showing anger for a lot of us is uncomfortable. And so
Yes.
it's like, and, but this is where the work of like, how are you sitting with yourself in the
Yes.
discomfort of the
Yep.
emotions that you're feeling? Because when you can sit with yourself in sadness, in loneliness, in anger and bitterness, then it gives you the ability to sit with someone else and to see someone else. And because this is a lot of stuff that I work with my clients on, helping them to like have a healthy detachment from their parents. We talk about attachment styles and anxious
Right.
attachment and all of that. And I apply it to your relationship. And this has a lot to do with how you were raised as a kid, like what happened with you as a child and what type
Mhm.
of relationship you had with your parents. Because what happens is a lot of times in our nervous system and in our body, we become that little kid again, but yet we're the
Yes.
one responsible to take care of them. And so
Mhm.
our nervous system is going like, what the hell is going on? Like, I'm freaking out. I'm so confused because like, I'm supposed to be, especially if you're in people pleasing mode with your parents. And then all of a sudden you're now like having people take care of them and things are happening. And it's just, we don't have time to go into all of these
Exactly.
dynamics.
100%. But what I loved about what you just said is that it's so much more. There is so much to uncover. And again, that is the work I personally have been doing for the last
Yeah.
5, 6 years, is uncovering all of that child stuff. And I came from a great family. I didn't come from an abusive family. I didn't come from, what some people, deem as trauma,
Yeah.
but everybody has trauma. There's something traumatic that happens in everybody's life, big or little, that changes the mind in a way that doesn't allow you to show up as authentically. And it's really about, and I find it almost, I'm not going to say a challenge, but I find it comforting that we can unlayer, right? And challenge yourself to keep doing that, because the more that you can unlayer and uncover and realize and see. And one of the things that I have noticed recently is that the same thing will continue to come up until I'm like, oh, there you are for the 100th time. So this means something. So I need to look at it a little bit differently. And I need to kind of examine, like, why does this keep, oh, okay, because I'm looking at this in the wrong way, or I'm handling this in the wrong way, or I'm reverting back to this old pattern. So I think, again, a lot of this stuff that creates wellness within us is really about going to the backstory. And when I work with clients, that's the first thing we do, is like, what is your health story? What is your wellness story? What were you told growing up? What did you live? Because all of that matters, because you can't change until you acknowledge, until you recognize, and you can't recognize until you sit with yourself and allow those thoughts to come up. And so I think, whether it's the caregiving role, whether it's trying to just make you a healthier version of yourself, it's all one and the same, because it's holistic. We're a holistic being of all parts and pieces. So it's not like you can departmentalize, and if you just do this, you'll be great. It's like, no, you've got to do all of it in a package, kind of. So I love everything you've said, because there's a lot of buzzwords recently, just like back in the day, like gluten-free, fat, all the fads, right? And I feel like breath work, and it might just be the world I live in, but breath work, nervous system, trauma, like those are like quote unquote buzzwords for a lot of people. But it's like, I challenge those people to dig, to do some research, to see what that actually means for them, because it means something different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm finishing my breathwork practitioner license right now, which is really exciting. So, and breathwork was actually, and somatic work was one of the major things that I stepped into when I was going through all of this and trying to understand my nervous system and how can I release this. And, one of the things that I kept saying to like when old patterns would show up, I would be like, like, that's really interesting. Like, what prompted that? So it's like, because it's really, we try to we just instinctually, out of habit or out of subconsciously, like, make ourselves right or wrong, right? Like, oh, I'm doing a good job, or, oh, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep going down this path? Why does this keep happening to me? And, and so it's trying to come from a place of non-judgment and like really figuring out like, that's really interesting. What about that feels comfortable to me? What about that pattern feels like it's supporting me right now? And it's like thanking that pattern for support. And then like, but what do I want it to look like? Like, I don't want to go to the alcohol and the binging and the food and the, like, all of those things, or the choosing anger or choosing bitterness or choosing like, I'm, locking myself in a room, even though that's, some of those are, anything is good within moderation.
Yes.
It's when we get into the binging and the deepness and the like, where we're going down into these deep holes, that it can be dangerous to ourselves and to our health. And so, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it was so good and so very true. And I often think, like, because I watched my mom, right? My mom and her siblings go through caring for, their parents. My dad's parents, I feel like, passed in a much quicker fashion, where my mom's was a lot longer. But for us, for our generation, I feel like we just have so much more awareness and tools at our fingertips. And maybe our parents did, and it just wasn't the world I was living in at the time. So I didn't know a lot about it, but I just feel like everybody needs to investigate these different things to find what works for them, because it's not a one-stop shop. It's not a one size fits all. It's everybody's different. But I feel like our generation has been walking a lot with blinders and just smashing through like the journey, right? Without stopping and asking those questions. Imagine if you were 5 and 6 years old and your parent was asking you, well, how does that feel for you? You know, does that seem like it sits well? You know, these are your other choices. You know, that just was. But I'm hopeful that this generation coming up, the more parents of our ages are doing this kind of work, that we can give them something a little bit different. You know, I always tell my kids, you know, you probably will end up in therapy at some point in your life talking things that I've done. But, you know, it's like, as a parent, you do the best that you can. But I never stop learning, because I told my kids, once you stop learning, you stop living, because there's always constant things to be learning about yourself, not about everybody else, but really like going inside of yourself and elevating. You know, you can't live from an elevated state if you're in a hole. You know, you can't give back to the community if you're in that hole. You can't show up your best for your family, your friends, yourself if you're in a hole. So it's, and it's overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. There are days where you might need a day just to cut it off, you know, and be in the room, right? And just put the blinders on for a moment, as long as you don't live there, as long as you pull yourself, and I call those dips, you know, as long as you come back up from the dip and use the tools you have, you know, you will march on and, you know, you'll grow. And that's what this journey is about growing. So we could talk for days, I'm sure, but I want to give people some tools they can take away today. I know we talked a little bit about somatic. It's a newer word for some people. Could you just give a definition so that people understand kind of why they might want to try that on?
Yeah. So somatic basically means, just soma means the study of the body. And so it is understanding how stress, tension builds up in the body. So if you ever watch an animal in the wild, if you go like Google, I don't know, animal fight or whatever, like when the animal's done fighting, you'll see it instinctually get up and it will shake it off. And instinctually, we as animals, and humans included, we humans, though, have a subconscious mind, so we stop ourselves from this. But if you look at your dog, if you look at your cat, if they fall down, they get up and they shake it off, because they understand the process of offloading stress from their body. We as humans did that as babies. We cried, we shook, we had tantrums as children. And somewhere along the lines, we were told that how we were offloading our stress and our emotions was wrong. And we weren't necessarily given a healthy way to be able to do that. Some of you probably were, you know, and if that was you, good for you. But most of us were not shown a healthy way, because most of our parents didn't have a healthy way to be able to offload our stress and offload that tension. So somatics is really just the use of using different modalities to be able to offload that stress from your body. So you're not, because even if you're just sitting here, like just take a second and like drop your shoulders, unclench your thighs, uncurl your toes, relax your fingers. Like we don't even realize, but we just sit in this like really balled up stress state all day. And so just those like common just moments and setting alarms and just like, okay, I'm just going to walk through and relax my body, because we're holding on to everything subconsciously. And even more so when you're going through chronic stress.
Yes, 150 million%. And, you know, conversations of like, you know, meditation, because some people don't want to try it, have tried it, say that doesn't work. And so I try to reframe it more as a time to just sit with yourself, doing just that, just relaxing your body, starting from your head down to your feet. That's as simple as it can start. And the more you do that, and the more you get comfortable and your body isn't trying to run away from it, because I think that's, you know, I mean, our minds are always going to wander. That's why we have our mind, right? But being able to just return to yourself, and the more you practice it, I have found that then when you get in those weird situations where you're wanting to revert to that old triggered feeling, You might
Mhm.
for a brief second, but then you're like, oh, okay, hold on, let me pause and let me use what I know so that I can relax a little bit, because we do walk around very tense all the time. It's like a heavy feeling almost. And just to be able to release, you should be able to feel more of a light feeling
Yep.
throughout your body. So one of the I just actually posted the other day, it was gosh, I can't remember her name. She was an actress. It was this movie clip. But anyway, she's out there and she's dancing and she's like shaking and stuff. And people laugh. It's like every morning you get up when you're by
Mhm.
yourself, no one has to be looking. If you're in your closet or you're in your bathroom or whatever, shake yourself, like dance for a second and just kind of shake it all
Mhm.
out and do it for like a week or two and just see, does that feel any different to you? Does it give you a different start to your day, or do you smile? It's like we just, again, we have
Mhm.
those blinders on and we've got to put some better self-care practices in place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean spending 2 hours in the morning
Mm-mm.
doing all the things. It's literally 5 minutes. And better than that is doing it like throughout the day. So
Yep.
I'm always telling people, get grounded while you're driving, you're sitting at a light, just get off your phone and look, breathe, and
Yeah. The
notice,
the
notice.
thing about like somatic stuff is it's the simple stuff. It's the breathing,
Exactly.
it's the dancing,
Yep.
it's the moving, it's the like, it's just getting out of, we're so rigid. And the
Mhm.
older we get, the more stress we're under, we become very rigid and we are not flexible in our programming. We're not flexible in our schedule. We're not flexible in, XYZ. And like if we can just let go a little bit and become more fluid, because the goal is not to have this nervous system that never goes into fight or flight. It's
Sure.
being able to go into fight or flight and to healthily come down and then like go back up and get back to like homeostasis or like get back to your resting, your balance. And really understanding in your body, again, this is a much deeper conversation, but understanding how fight or flight shows up in your body. What are your
Mhm.
behaviors that you exhibit? And then there's specific things that you can counterbalance that to be able to know what to do. Like one of the things that I help my clients do is build a stress response plan as well as a self-care plan because they're different. Like a
Interesting.
self-care plan is like day to day, how you're
Mhm.
taking care of yourself, how you're nourishing yourself. We're a human plant. We need food, we need water, we need sunlight, we need all of these things, and we need oxygen. A lot of times you're just breathing into your lungs. Do you know you need to breathe all the way to your diaphragm? Like there's just
A
these
lot of people
simple
don't know.
things.
Yeah.
And so we're missing like 3/4 of our lungs. And then, we're wondering why we have lung issues later in life. And so because they haven't been used for years. And so, but then a stress response plan is like, what is that? Like, what do you do when like DEFCON 5 hits and you just,
Right.
like everything, you just had an emergency, you ran to the hospital, your loved one had a seizure, they started choking and you thought like that was the moment and it was going to be your fault. And, whatever the situation is for you, but like, how do you get your nervous system back on track when you are hyper activated and you feel like you're personally going to die because your heart's beating through your chest? Because that in itself is stress hormones and all of this, like so many cascading events that are happening in your body that we want to get a hold of before it can become damaging to you as the caregiver.
Yeah. And I love that. I love having the two separate things. I think it's a
Mhm.
good way to look at, how you show up, because again, we
Mhm.
are never not going to be triggered at some point.
Yep.
Right. And I think what's for me really, really cool is now when I have that DEFCON 5 hit,
Mhm.
I can say, even if I go up for a second, I now have the wherewithal to know I cannot live there. I cannot stay there.
Yep.
And that means I need to step away and take time for myself for 5 minutes just to re-regulate so that I can show back
Mhm.
up in a different way. And again, it keeps, you will always be triggered along your journey, right?
Mhm.
But it is recognizing and learning. And again, it's doable. I mean, the
Mhm.
other thing I wanted to say is I keep thinking back to school, because it's when
Mhm.
we get into those school age time where we're forced to get rid of play. We're
Mhm.
forced to, sit in a chair and learn a specific way and all the things. And the school system needs to switch. And I keep saying that on all levels, food to classes. It's like there
Mhm.
needs to be, it's like we're still living in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's
Yep.
like we're 2024 at this point. And
Mhm.
what if, our kids had those tools already coming
Yeah.
up, learning how to breathe better, learning what do I do when I feel this way,
Yep.
Giving them the tools at a younger age. I specifically remember one of my daughters, when she gets mad, she has a lot that comes up inside of her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you have to release that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to stand here in the middle of our entire home and like have all the feelings, right? It's fine to have the feelings, but you need to do it over here so that you have the space where no one's watching.
Mm-hmm.
You can do whatever you need to do to help yourself come back down, but it's then not triggering the rest of the family, because to watch that sometimes, but just giving them permission to continue to feel those feelings for a moment in a safe way, in an environment, I think is really important, because they need space to release. Otherwise, like you said, it just suppresses and suppresses. And then, I don't know, but this midlife, it's coming all back. It's coming back up at some point in your life.
Yep.
I also think we lose our voice because we're instructed all the time, like, do this, do this, do that, do that, and something I find with my mom that I'm reverting to is a lot of like what I do with the kids is, here's your two choices, basically, like, would you like to do this now, or would you like to do it in a little bit? Either way, it's getting done. So, but it's giving her the
autonomy.
To choose her choice, whatever that looks like. And if she forgets in 5 minutes, whatever, at least in that moment, she feels like she's getting a choice.
Yep.
But I remember specifically doing a lot of that with the kids, and, everybody's so different. It's hard to do everything for everybody. But so when you work with the clients, just paint an overall picture of what the flow looks like, what people would get from you. Is it a 8-week program? Is it a one-on-one? Is it a group? Like, what are all the things? Where can they find you and all of that?
Yeah. So, you can find me on Instagram right now is the best place. Next Gen Caregiver. So next with a T, Next Gen Caregivers. I'm sure we'll have it linked. And so right now I am creating things that are available to caregivers night or day, and along with a community that they will have access to night or day. So right now I have a free community on Facebook. It's called the Abundant Caregiver Community. And so where I teach you how to just have abundance in your life as a caregiver. Like, you don't have to wait for this season to pass. You can find abundance here. And just really how to get off the roller coaster. It's, we're going to get on the roller coaster, but I also want to teach you how to get off the roller coaster, that you can learn how to ride the roller coaster with joy, and that it doesn't have to be this like death grip that you're just like barely holding on the whole time, and just how to get grounded and get on solid ground. So I have some things coming, because there's really a 4-prong approach that I teach caregivers. One, how to get grounded in home, in your system, in your systems as a caregiver, how to get grounded in your mindset with boundaries, with managing your own mindset, how to get grounded in your body with your emotions, with your how to process quote unquote negative emotions, and like what that means. I don't believe any emotion is negative or positive. They just are. And so how to sit with yourself in those emotions, and how to learn the language of your body. When your body is speaking, body needs to process things. What does that look like? And then also in your spirit, like, what does it look like to, if you don't have a spiritual life, to grow a spiritual life? Because I really believe that you need to have something to hold on to that's higher than you in this journey, and to have faith. So, so right now I'm building things that are going to support all of that for caregivers, and they're going to be able to access it at any time, day or night, because I realize, like, you can't wait until Thursday at 3 p.m. to talk to me, when you can't sleep for 5 days in a row and you're like, I need something right now. So something is coming very soon. Well, I don't know when this is launching, so it might already be out.
Very true. Okay. So that's all great stuff. And I'll definitely link everything in the show notes and all of that. I want to thank you, number one, for walking the journey personally, but then recognizing that there is a need. And I always think to myself, we normally start scrambling, and that's when we start, losing our health, and we start going down these paths that are not serving us and all of that. And my prayer for everybody who is about to walk through this is that immediately when things start to pop up, that you don't wait until you're a year in and then you're suffering. it's like, get on top of it. That, you know, the sooner you can get on top of it, the better. And if you are doing personal work before this phase ever hits, it will still hit, right? And it will still show up in different ways for everybody, but it won't be as traumatizing as you're walking through the I call it the insanity roller coaster, because it is, there is no timeline. It's not like, oh, this will be over in a week. I mean, like you said earlier, is it a week? Is it a month? Is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? And, you know, that was a conversation I had with my sister and brother. It's like, we can't look 10 years out. We need to do what's best at this moment. And then as things roll along, we'll just have to figure it out at that time. But we can't hold back things thinking that she could live another 20 years because maybe she's only going to live 5. Who knows, you know? And the other thing that you and I can have a whole nother conversation on is hospice, and what people do not know what is available. And I think that's such a shame. Again, I feel like this falls on our healthcare systems a lot, but there needs to be a person plan in place that, you know, hey, you're entering this phase of life. You know, your mother has this. Here's some information to help you kind of decipher and understand what your options are. Like, I had no idea that hospice is just not for end of life. No idea about that. So once we got educated on that, I'm like, well, she meets all the criteria, so why aren't we utilizing it? And that whole system is all dysfunctional. So then it's like learning through their dysfunctional system and figuring out how to have that voice and all of the things. But again, learning what is available for you to create the best scenario, not just for yourself, but for your loved one. And that off ripples to you, because when they're being cared for properly and with the best techniques and best tools and practices, then you can take a breath for a minute and not feel like things are just always, you know, buzzing up and just to fall down. So, but again, there's nothing out there really that I have found that helps when you're diagnosed with dementia. There are dementia like caregiving meetings I've been to, but that's more just, it's not comprehensive, I guess. And like you said, I don't need it every month on a Tuesday. I need it like today. I need a document of some sort that I can sift through. And I read a lot, and I'm reading this really amazing book. I'll send it to you. I don't have it in front of me, but it is about Alzheimer's, and it is about more of the scientific side of it. But when you are diagnosed, it's like, you know, they were saying, and they're like, you get a colonoscopy, you should get a cognoscopy or something. It's like where they look at your brain. And it's why aren't we doing that? Like, we look at every part of our body, but we really never look at our brain until something crazy. So very interesting, just kind of take, I'm not even like 1/4 of the way through the book, and I'm like, wow, this is all great information that no one's ever shared. So again, the more we can share, right, the more people have the experiences, that's where I feel like the change is going to come from. It's not having an expectation that somebody's going to give you all the stuff. It's us learning through and then sharing and using our voice. And like you said, back in the COVID time when you had to like scream and fight, I think that, you know, back in my early childhood, I was a screamer, you know, and I was known as the screamer. Now I'm not. I barely, sometimes I raise my voice, but not very on the quiet side. But I'm like, that was there for a reason, because I am now utilizing that voice. Do not come at me with some kind of BS, because I'm not going to put up with it. Like, I'm going to speak up for the truth. I'm going to speak up for my mother. I'm going to advocate for her until the day she dies. So I'm not somebody that's just going to be like, oh, okay, that's the way it goes. No. What good, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm sure there's a little something behind that. That could be unlayered, but she doesn't have a voice anymore. So we are the voice. Okay, so before we go, I always ask everybody, what is a couple of non-negotiables that you have that you live by that creates the best wellness for you?
Non-negotiables. Listening to my body, not just, you know, I think that is something huge that I learned. I had to learn the language of my body and what a yes meant in my body and what a no meant in my body when I was supposed to do something versus when I wasn't supposed to do something, because our body will tell us, and our body is very smart. And anytime that I have felt the inclination to not do something and I did it anyways, I usually end up regretting it. And this is, sometimes where we have to learn how to prioritize our own well-being over pleasing someone else, which can be challenging, especially as a caregiver. This doesn't mean that you're neglecting your loved one. That's not what I'm saying. But when it comes to maybe other co-caregivers or friends or family members or whatever that looks like, it just means that you're prioritizing what your yes is and what your no is. I think another thing is really tracking that 1% impact that I'm increasing in my day. So what that looks like for me practically is when I was extremely busy as a caregiver and running my businesses and doing everything, I would have a pad of paper next to my bed. And in the morning, I would say, how am I going to show up for me today? And I would put whatever, I would just like sit and I would take a couple deep breaths in, and whatever came to me, that's what it was. If it was tracking my water, if it was making sure I got outside, like I didn't, we can get inundated with all of these things. And I am the queen of like, I got to have a 3-hour process in the morning. And like, that's not sustainable. There might be seasons where you do that, but it's just not realistic. And so I would focus on the one thing. And then at the end of the day, I would write on that same piece of paper, how did I show up for myself today? And funny enough, whenever I would do that one thing that I promised myself, I always found time to do more, because I realize that I have more time and space. And it's like, once you get on that trajectory moving forward, it's like all of a sudden there's just more time available made to you. It's like, oh, I actually can do this, because we get so stuck in our brain for what that looks like. And I think probably the last non-negotiable, oh gosh, there's so many.
While you're thinking about that, I just offer the one that you just said. I love to help people carve out that time, like find the time, because I do believe that we all have a routine, whatever that looks like, right? Whether it has things in there that are those 1% shift forward, or if we have those in that we do that keep us in fight or flight, or we have ones that we're just zooming through with our blinders on. So everybody has a routine. So when people say, I don't have a morning routine, it's like, you do. What does your morning look like? So if that means that you hop out of bed, you jump on your phone, you take a shower, you're already like buzzing. If that means you run out of the house without breath, there's something happening in your morning. Then you can look at, okay, well, let's tweak one tiny thing within. And like you said, I love the pad of paper idea just because it's concrete and it allows you, I think paper to pen is a really transformative thing. So writing it out, I love that. I'm going to try that. I love it.
Yeah. When it gives your brain evidence that you're actually showing up for yourself. Because even if you're doing things, especially when you're doing things for so many people, you can forget, like, did I actually do that today? Oh, I did. Like, I'm a badass. Like, I showed up for myself today. Like, and then those little things become like such a big deal, because you're like, ooh, I want to write it on my piece of paper. And it's so simple, but it's like, so like, you want to pat on the back. But I think the other thing is really just core basic principles of what our body needs to handle life, which is good nutrition, water, and sunlight and movement. Like literally, those are the things that I would always go back to. They sound so simple. And when I say it to caregivers, they're like, okay, but it's got to be more complex than that. And I'm like, no, it's really not. Like your body is made up of cells. And if your cells don't have enough water, they can't do what they need to do. If they don't have good nutrition and you're filling it with fast food and sugar and like all of this stuff, they can't do what they need to do. And so therefore you have brain fog, you're gaining weight, there's so many things that just can be cured if we just get those solid building blocks and we focus on those, and everything else will come.
Yeah, 100,000,000% cannot agree with that more. It is just those simple things that we put in place that shifts everything. And people can't believe that until they actually do it, and then they believe it. It's like one of those things they've been kind of trained that they need this complex thing in order to make change. And like you said, if you have a whole list of 20 things that you're trying to accomplish and you're only really starting at one, it's never going to be sustainable. And so that was the reason I created like the whole 1% shift method, the methodology that I teach people, because like you said, you write the one thing down. It's not 20 things. It's one thing that you're committing to for the day. And if you're someone who doesn't like a lot of rigidity, I guess that would be, is then change it up every day,
Yeah.
just implement. And then when you find a thing that sticks, that makes you feel good, you will start to repeat that.
Yeah. When it'll become, it's just like walking through a blanket, snow. Like if you shovel your driveway or your walkway in a snow path, it's like a well-made crease in your brain. Those are all the habits that happen naturally. You don't even have to think twice about it. But when you start a new path in the snow, it takes you a lot of times going back and forth in that path to create a new pathway. And it's the same thing in our brain. Eventually, what feels hard will happen automatically, but we have to do it enough times when we don't want to. And then all of a sudden it will become second nature and you'll never remember a time where you didn't do it.
Yeah. It's called a habit loop. I love it. I agree totally with it. So, all right. For everybody who's listening, I know for sure that everybody can walk away with at least a few things that, have resonated, that you guys feel comfortable trying on. And, I think that's the most important thing, is giving yourself flexibility to try things that you hear and then try them enough times to see if it really shifts your perspective or the way you feel. I think I always go back to feeling, because when you feel better, you will continue on that same journey. If you are not feeling it, just pivot and try something else. There's no one-stop shop for everybody. It's you kind of pull together what you need as far as tools and stuff. So I hope everybody has a great rest of their week, and I look forward to hearing from you guys and seeing what resonates with you. So thank you so much, Erin, for coming on, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. And if you are in this season of life or have been in it or see it coming on the horizon, check out the show notes and, connect with Erin. 4 of the takeaways that I felt like I really wanted to circle back around with is, number 1, self-care is essential for caregivers. The importance of managing our stress and emotions through this time using techniques like breath work and somatic practices are so vital. Prioritizing our basic needs like sleep, nutrition, sunlight, all the basics. You need those in place so that you can thrive through this chapter. Number 2, building that support system, having that tribe of friends and family or a caregiving team that can provide invaluable support through this chapter. Erin has this program, Next Gen Caregivers, which aims to equip caregivers with tools and resources to build resilience through this chapter. Make sure that you check it out. Number 3, be flexible and adaptable, because if you are dealing with someone, caregiving needs change on a dime. And so it's just about having the mindset of flexibility, embracing that 1% shift that we always talk about. Making those small, sustainable changes to improve your well-being then gives you the ability to care for others, from a better space. And lastly, do not be afraid to seek help. Caregiving, is a lot, but when you prioritize your own well-being and you seek help early on, you can avoid the burnout. And I've been there, and I didn't avoid it, and I did get burned out, and I'm in it for a second time in a different way. And I'm telling you, it really does truly help. Utilizing your resources, and don't hesitate to reach out to Erin, reach out to me, find your tribe. It really does help. So without that, I hope that you guys have an amazing rest of your week, and I look forward to hearing from you guys about what you thought about this episode. If you know somebody who's in this stage of life, please share this episode with them. The more that we can learn, the more that we can hear, the better we do as a whole. So love to you all. Talk to you next week. Thank you for tuning in to another episode on healthy lifestyle habits for midlife mamas. I hope you found a 1% shift this week to move you forward on your wellness journey. Remember, small changes add up to big transformations. I want to hear what resonated with you. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and rate the show. Your feedback is truly the only way that I know that you're taking away 1% shifts, adding value to your journey. It is also a way for others to find the podcast. My dream is to empower others to create health and healing. And so I would love for this show to spread wide and far. To stay connected, please check out my Instagram and Facebook pages at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Join my newsletter and grab some freebies at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com. And if you're looking to work one-on-one with a health coach, feel free to book a discovery call on my website as well. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your day. It truly means a lot that you are allowing me on your wellness journey with you. Until next time, find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to happen. Have a great day.